unusual passage of Scripture, but it's one that my prayer is that it's one that you become very familiar with. I'm assuming that not very many of you are familiar with this verse. But my prayer tonight and my aim tonight is to alert you to the significance of this passage. So when you leave tonight, you may not understand all the details, but you say in your heart, by the grace of God, I'm going to grasp what Jesus said here in Matthew 24. Let's read it. He said in verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, then the scripture goes on to say, whoever reads what Daniel wrote about the abomination of desolation, here's a special exhortation, make sure you understand it. Make it a priority to understand it. Why? Verse 21, because when you see this happen, what happens is the next thing that happens in the earth is the Great Tribulation. Now maybe you're looking at this passage and you're going, I don't really follow what this is about. And I trust that you're going to be able to understand this a little bit in just a little bit of a focus on this. And just because the notes are so brief here tonight, I want you to know that on our web stream, on our website, I have about a 15-page document explaining the details in far more detail. So I'm going to give you just a real brief overview, and you can develop your understanding more if you're interested in this. Let's read it again. In verse 15, Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation. Now, the abomination of desolation is the central event of the Antichrist reign of terror. And I'll explain the abomination of desolation in a minute. It's a very simple principle. It's an unusual term, but it's very simple. So don't go like, wow, what's that? That's too heavy. That's too hard to understand. No, it's quite simple. But again, if your interest is stirred up, I got a lot more detail on this on the website. For those of you, and I trust that some of you are going to really say, I got to get to know this. Because consider it. This is Jesus. He's pointing to one vision in the Old Testament, the vision that Daniel the prophet received from a mighty angel. And he's saying in essence, Jesus now, the one vision you've got to understand is Daniel chapter 11 and 12, where this evil, height of human and demonic evil is described. Go read it. And when you read it, confidence will come to your heart. Hope will rise in your heart. You will have a sense of clarity about where the future is going. Beloved, we're drawing close to one of the most dramatic time frames of all human history. All of human history has pointed to one generation. And that's the generation of which the abomination of desolation takes place. Greatest demonic and human sin ever, but the greatest release of the power of God that has power and authority to triumph in the midst of the greatest darkness. Now, Daniel wrote about this in a section of his prophecy in Daniel 11 and 12. There's 26 verses, and I have it all on the notes and more on the extended notes, where a mighty angel appeared to Daniel and says, Daniel, let me explain the abomination of desolation, and let me tell you what else is going to happen when sin and darkness.
It's amazing, but there's a magic number, and it's 72. Hello, I'm John. And mathematicians have known for many, many years that for some reason the number 72 is like a magic code that will tell you very important information. And it works like this.
Birth date August 9th, year of 1972. 8 times 9 equals 72. Born at 827 at Valley Priest Hospital, address 722 Hill Street. There have been 222 days in the year. 104 to 4 remain. Most major events have occurred for me on dates involving 72. Once this bizarre coincidence was noticed, our mathematician and statistician asked me to provide any documentation randomly generated, such as driver's licenses, pink slips, paperwork from government agencies, etc. The amount of times this number 7 and 72 appear on these documentations and in other areas of my life must be being generated or placed there by someone or something. Of course that's ridiculous, because the odds that number could possibly appear around me that often without outside intelligence somehow deliberately placing it everywhere around me was astronomical. It's estimated from all the proof gathered up far that the odds of me and not deliberately putting that number into my life is about